What is relationship reimagined?
Okay. At core, it's a process of seeing clearly what is and what was, seeing the water that you're swimming in, right? The societal and familial norms that you've been in, and all of the implicit, unconscious agreements, the expectations that we've built without ever even really thinking about it. And also just taking the time to acknowledge that our imagination tends to get frozen. So we have these frozen images of who I am, who my partner is. A reimagination process is about seeing that water clearly.
So I'm noticing that the first couple minutes of your definition is all about what is. It's not about what's next.
Yeah.
Yet.
Yep. And because all of that has to come. And then it's about choosing from this aware, awake position of I am seeing, which doesn't mean we're seeing perfectly. It doesn't mean that we are necessarily even agreeing, because we're never going to see things. We're seeing it from our own perspectives, but choosing from that awake, aware position to co-create something new. It's not as simple as just making a new agreement. If it were that, I would call it renegotiation. That is a piece of this, but we're going to talk through this. That comes later.
Okay.
Welcome to Playing with Fire, the podcast for people who are ready to custom build their love.
We're talking about non-monogamy, however you design it, as an individuation opportunity.
Want to leave the default and make your life spectacularly you? You're in the right place.
So, Jolie, this is the 250th episode of Playing with Fire.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! And
okay, wait, would you have imagined that you would be here 250 episodes into a podcast where you talk about relationships, love, sex, all publicly?
Well, right up to a minute or two ago, it was just a number. But now you're saying it's a number of times I have been on a podcast, actually a little less than the number of times I have been on a podcast about relationships and being a person.
High five. Congratulations.
Well,
you're human and great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Way to go us for sticking the course. So we've been at this since 2020. And here we are. 250 episodes in.
And today we're going to do something a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, we have paper in front of us.
And we unapologetically, these are...
I usually have notes, but usually I just have like a page of notes.
Right, just a reference. But
I have pages.
Yeah, this is different because today we're talking about relationship reimagining, which we did... How long ago? A year plus?
Yeah, it was back episode 194. Yeah. So yeah, it's going back a ways.
It's going back a ways, and we're coming back around to it. And honestly, I'm glad for the time in between because, boy, I've learned an awful lot, and I've seen you have more experiences with more people. And it really has informed the work that you've done.
For me, this has been this in-between time was essential because as soon as we published that episode, I mean, as soon as, like within hours after publishing that episode, we had multiple requests for what are the steps? What do we do? Like, how do I do this? I want to do that. Some of them came from people I'd never met before, I'd never heard from before, listeners. Some of them came from people who this was the first episode that they'd ever heard because a partner forwarded it to them. Mm-hmm. Some of the messages came from people inside of the Year of Opening community who were like, well, I want more of that, that thing. And you know, to be honest, it was so tempting. I am an operationalizer. Like by nature.
Yes,
it's my way. I love to take something complicated and break it down into manageable steps, phases to really like
and you've
make
been trying
it into
to
something.
Do that with me in our sex life for years.
It has worked.
I still, it has improved things quite a lot. I still complicate things that don't need complicating.
But. It's true. I mean, step by step, and then you just get it tattooed inside your wrist.
A tattoo?
There
That's
you
a
go.
Great idea. Then I don't have to look at my phone.
Helpful. Oh my gosh, you could get an A ladder tattoo.
Yeah.
I kind of love that. That would be adorable.
Or I
Okay,
could
Cass,
just
if
get
you're
a little
listening,
whiteboard and I could write in the one that I currently need.
if our absolute favorite tattoo
Oh, yeah.
artist is listening,
Yeah.
I think that would be fun. Okay, but in the interim time, so well over a year here, I do this work, this process called a relationship reimagination. I've been doing it for years with people, but generally speaking, I've done it inside of a closed container for a couple or a polycule. We customize it for them. It's an incredibly delicate and so intricate, that's a better word,
Intricate.
intricate
Yeah.
process that I'm customizing the whole way. And so when people asked for steps, I was like, well, yes, I can talk about steps, but I knew deep down that if I put it out there like it was steps, we were going to have a problem because it makes it look like a linear process. And there is
Yeah.
nothing linear and straightforward about reimagining your
Oh,
relationship.
it's got the word imagination in it. I wouldn't
Right.
expect it to be linear.
And it's not even a spiral, which you and I talk about so frequently. In this case, even a spiral sort of evokes an image of forward motion along a particular path.
Yeah.
This is a process. This is a pot of soup. We're
Right.
going to get in
Yeah.
it.
Yep.
We're going to soak for a little bit.
Okay. And so over the past year, you've been mulling over this and
been codifying
researching and
things.
codifying and this is your work. So this episode is going to be me interviewing you. This is not my work. I mean, I'm involved, I'm engaged, I like it, but you're the expert.
Well, and you've participated in reimagining our relationship.
Sure, I've
And
participated
I think
in
you've
it.
also participated in reimagining other relationships, but I mean, I'm not present to that because they're yours.
Right.
But I appreciate you calling that out because first off, this is it. This is it's not even just my job. This is my life's work.
Right.
My life's work is about relationships, particularly complex relationships, and applying depth psychological um, concepts, ideas, moves to complex relationships and teasing out something new, something that doesn't currently exist in standard relationship or therapeutic practices. And something that doesn't exist yet in the depth psychological literature. So it's also related to the writing that I'm doing behind the scenes because I'm actually working on 2 books, but I find I can't write a book until it's ready to be born. So the idea of presenting this as if it's, some book you can take off a shelf and just like thumb through and do the thing, that didn't land for me either.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate you naming that. You see how complicated the work I do is, and you participate, you are fully engaged, but there's a reason I talk 75% of the time and you talk 25%
I was going to
of the
bring that
time.
up. Yeah.
Like,
and so, yeah, if people are looking to hear more of my voice, well, it's going to be in here, but this knowledge lives in you.
And this isn't your full-time job.
And this isn't my full-time job.
It's not what your degrees are in.
It is not.
And
I'm happy to be involved and to participate and to have the conversations because they're amazing. But yeah, and we were prepping for this episode, and it became obvious that I couldn't come in here as a peer with my set of like psychological
like frameworks
concepts
and ideas
and frameworks. No, this is your work that I have the ability to talk about with you. So
you have the most ability of anybody I've ever met. So I appreciate you being the one who's having this conversation with me.
So let's have an interview conversation about it so that not just I get my answers, but everybody else can get their answers too.
I love it.
Nice.
Thanks. And I see
which
that
is
you prepped.
Why the papers, because I'm not going to remember all of the.
Well, and I prepped too, specifically for I want to make sure if I'm giving you a definition or talking about the different moves that I'm imagining, the different. Well, we'll get to it. They're not phases. They're not steps. But I want to make sure that I'm working from something that is repeatable, that you all can come back to and refer back to in the future. Not because this won't change, but because it's complicated enough to do a reimagine
Right.
without muddying our
Yeah.
language. So thanks for taking the time to prep.
Absolutely. So
with me.
I do. I have a collection of questions, and some of them you know about. And one of them I wanted to ask right up front. The way you write Relationship Reimagined, there's always a dash between re and imagine.
Yep.
I wanted to ask you about that.
Oh, well, depth psychologists, we love a hyphen. We're
I'm
like,
sorry. Did I say dash? I meant hyphen.
we love a hyphen. It's doing some work there. Like that hyphen, that reimagine, it helps me, for one thing. It helps me remember that the core of this is my imagination. The core of this is me imagining, me leaning into the imaginal realm, me also allowing psyche to speak in its native language, image.
Image, reimagining. I didn't even see that one. Okay,
So,
cool.
So it really, really helps me to not just tighten up that word, drop that dash, and all of a sudden, I don't know, it flattens it a little bit. So yeah, it's on purpose.
And psychologists don't like to flatten things.
We don't. It, like if you look at James Hellman's work, you know, he has the incredibly famous core text in depth psychology, Revisioning Psychology, has that same mood. M.L. von Franz's book, Projection Recollection. And you probably, if you're thinking through right now, you probably heard me say that. I say re, and then there's this little pause. That's why. It's because we're making space for the word to especially if there's a verb there, like
recollection,
to
remember.
Really, yeah, exactly.
Reimagine.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so that's great. Thank you. And now let's get into the definition. What is relationship reimagined?
Okay. At core, it's a process of seeing clearly what is and what was, seeing the water that you're swimming in, right? The societal and familial norms that you've been in, and all of the implicit, unconscious agreements, the expectations that we've built without ever even really thinking about it. And also just taking the time to acknowledge that our imagination tends to get frozen. So we have these frozen images of who I am, who my partner is. A reimagination process is about seeing that water clearly.
So I'm noticing that the first couple minutes of your definition is all about what is. It's not about what's next.
Yeah.
Yet.
Yep. And because all of that has to come. And then it's about choosing from this aware, awake position of I am seeing, which doesn't mean we're seeing perfectly. It doesn't mean that we are necessarily even agreeing, because we're never going to see things. We're seeing it from our own perspectives, but choosing from that awake, aware position to co-create something new. It's not as simple as just making a new agreement. If it were that, I would call it renegotiation. That is a piece of this, but we're going to talk through this. That comes later.
Okay. So I guess you're kind of getting into this a little bit, but so you just defined it.
Yeah.
And people have reached out to you and have been reaching out and begging for a while, like, please, can we get more information about this? And what are some ways that people are misunderstanding what they're asking for?
Okay, so when I hear people talking about, we want to reimagine, what are the steps? Underneath that is often a desire to fix something that they feel is broken, or something they've outgrown, needs to be like retrofit. Often there's a sense of like, I need to learn from someone else how the right way to do relationships would be, especially if we're leaving an outworn, old pattern and we want something new. Let me learn the right way. So often what they're looking for is some new box to get into. but they don't realize it. And I understand why, because this is exactly what I was looking for. When monogamy didn't fit anymore, that's what I was looking for. But also, even in my first marriage, like when we went from being two people to being two married people, it was like I wanted to know what's the right way to get from this stage to that stage. So there was a bit of like rule seeking, or what's the
Okay.
guiding principle here? And that desire to have somebody else outline it forecloses the imagination, right? It's like I'm looking for it from the outside. So I've been hesitant because it's too easy for people to take someone like me, just because I have a microphone. I just bought it, y'all. I just bought it. I didn't have to license this thing. I think maybe we should have to, but
Maybe we should have permits at least.
um but I just bought a microphone, and here I am, and I have a platform, and now I've been speaking and writing and publishing, and I did all this work, but that doesn't mean that I can imagine what your relationship even can be, let alone should be.
Okay. So it sounds like you're saying that, and I would fall into this camp sometimes, I think, where I want this to be better, different. I want to resolve some set of issues in my relationship. And so I want somebody else to come along and like, here's a way you can get out of this,
Right.
versus saying, well, why don't you think about how you want to get out of it?
Yeah, we're
It's
going to
like
have to
two
sit
different. Yeah.
in what we are in.
And do you find there's a difference in, I mean, there are a bunch of different roles in any relationship, particularly
Sure.
when, uh, well, at least in the context of opening up, very often we find there's the people who are there because they want to open, and then there are people who are there because their partners want to open,
Right.
and
Okay, so yeah, so I see three different sort of styles that people come in as.
mhm,
Some people are looking for, like, I think I already know where we need to go, right? Like they're often coming in looking for me as an expert or a guide or a mentor. They're looking for me to verify that the path that they are already
oh
pretty
yeah,
sure should happen is the direction they should
they're looking
go.
like that for validation for
Right.
this will work, right?
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's not a reimagining, right? I can absolutely give you tools and skills. I can guide you. I can help nurture the ability to apply the tools, but you got to get in there and do the imagining, and you got to include your partner. And that actually brings us to the um so often there's a reluctant partner somewhere in the room as well. If there's a reluctant partner in the situation, then often the idea of a reimagining becomes this sort of like a life preserver. Like for the hopeful partner, often they're like, a reimagine doesn't sound like therapy. A reimagine doesn't sound like we have to open. A reimagine, there's something kind of open about it,
Hmm.
and often there is this hope that this will finally be the thing that gets my lethargic partner, like the partner who's just not showing up and participating in co-creating the relationship in a really active sense, that'll get them to do that, or get them to join me in repair, get me. So that is another place, and this is tricky. We're going to get to like what the baseline requirements are, and that's a tricky spot to come in at, because you might have that hope, but that doesn't mean that your partner's ready to actually do the work that I described, that seeing through and being with the imagination. And then of course there's the folks who come to me who honestly they want the shortcut. Let's skip the hard parts. They often say
Mhm.
something like, the past is in the past, and I don't want to spend much time focusing on that. Can't fix that. So I just want to focus on what's ahead of us. Let's just build something new. So yeah, a reimagination sounds great, but yeah, we're not going to go digging up in the past, which is yeah. So you're skipping the essential ingredients in any depth process. We're going to have to do repair work and grief work and shadow work and all these things that you and I have talked about already
Yep.
in other episodes. And to act like somehow we can just take a word like reimagine and skip over that is, well, it's bullshit. It won't work.
It's not going to work.
So
It's going to be something else. It's not going to be this.
yeah, and
Yeah.
this often also um, leads people to think that they can do the work really fast.
That is not a thing. This is not fast work, as
It's
I
not fast
understand it,
work.
as I've
No.
experienced it and watched.
No, one of the most common things I get is a request from people like they want like a they're willing to put in like 3 months.
And what do you recommend?
I don't work with anyone for less than a year ever. That's just not a thing I do. And generally speaking, if we're talking about a reimagination, it's going to be multiple years. That's just what it is. Does that mean you have to work with me one on one? No. I'm not even sure that it's about multiple years of therapy necessarily, though I think for many of us, some therapeutic work will be a part of this process. But when I say multiple years, like, we're talking about an endeavor to see who you've been,
Mm.
what you're doing, to see the relationship, to re-see your partner, and then co-create something new. Well, how are you going to do that fast? How? And I mean, I don't know. You were probably going to ask me about timing down the road, but
But here we are.
I'm that 3 months, by the way, is not it's not like people are showing up saying, "Yeah, let's I'll give you 3 months." It's not like they move into my house and now we're full time
It's
working on
not
this
three.
for
Oh,
3
right.
months.
It's not 3 months.
No,
It's
it's usually
actually
like, "Yeah, we're willing to invest like a session a week." So what, maybe 60 or 90 minutes a week for 3 months. Okay, so like 12 to 15 hours. 12 to 15 hours. And then they'll be like, "Well, yeah, we'll do homework." Okay, how
so
much?
you don't think that's enough time to fully understand themselves and each other and all the things that got them where they are, and then spend the time to imagine what they might do next.
Ken, do you think you could build a house in 12 to 15 hours? Do you think you could deconstruct
I couldn't even tear
and
down a
then
house in
and then
12 to 15
and then rebuild?
hours.
And here's the thing, even if we have a fantastic contractor.
Oh, we do.
He
Yes.
is
Yep.
I love him so much. I think he is one of the best in the business. If I went to Adam and said, "Okay, 3 months. I want you to deconstruct this house and then rebuild it." He would laugh so heartily. In fact, I'm inclined to ask him this next
It
time we
would be
see him.
fun just to watch
It
him
would be
laugh. Give him
fun.
a good laugh.
Right. That is not reasonable. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the interior structure
Yeah.
of not just the people involved in this relationship, which, by the way, there may be more than two of, too, but also the space in between you.
And there's the dynamic nature of human life as well.
Right? Life's
And
not going to stop during that
life's not
time.
going to stop. The seasons change.
Yeah.
And what things look like in the summer. I mean, I am someone who lives more in the moment than, well,
Beautifully, you do.
you tend to hold multiple times at the same time. But in the middle of summer, I am not as clear about what winter is like.
Yep.
And so if I did this work in the summer,
Yeah.
when winter came, there would be a whole bunch of things that I hadn't thought of yet. It's just a small example of
Yeah.
how
No, I think
I've seen stuff get missed
right. It's
by
so
rushing.
easy to also just overestimate our capacity.
Yeah.
What's my actual capacity? And that maybe this is a good time too. Can I just add in a little bit about what this really is? Like what it really is. I'm using
Yeah.
the word reimagine.
Yep.
I want to throw in another very depth psychological phrase with another hyphen. Yay.
Oh, yay.
Soul making. This
Ooh.
is relationships viewed through the lens of relationships are soul making. They're a place. Relationships are a place where psyche is actively making you and remaking you, right? So Hillman would talk about, so Hillman's psychology is archetypal psychology, but it is, I think it's better referred to as imaginal psychology, but soul making is a way of saying this is so much bigger than do we get along? Do we have date nights? How's our sex life even? It's even bigger than do we share values or do we live in alignment with those values? Soul making is about we're doing the relationship. You've said this recently in several episodes. Oh, a check-in is the relationship and a repair is the relationship. And getting down into the nitty-gritty of an agreement is the relationship. They're also all soul-making activities.
Mhm.
They are the actions of psyche becoming itself and increasingly becoming self-aware. So when we talk about individuation, this work, this deep work that, maybe I'm making it sound like, oh, this is just going to be such a burden. I don't mean that. I mean, no, this is it. Like, if you're ready for like second half of life, let's pull our fucking boots up and do this now. This is the work. This is the work of becoming more and more conscious of who we are. This is where we can do our relational individuation, not just differentiating, hey, that's yours, I'm not going to tend that work, but really becoming myself in this relationship.
So the work of reimagining is an opportunity. I mean, and from what I'm hearing, not just an opportunity, but is the work of like
Yeah.
you can't really do it without understanding yourself better.
Yeah, it's an essential ingredient. We're going to talk about the conditions required, and it is one of the conditions
And
required for a
so
reimagine.
so that's reimagining that
Yeah.
we're talking about.
Yep.
And that's different from well, how is that different from discernment, for example?
Okay, so have we done a whole episode on discernment, on should I stay, should I go? I don't know whether we have. We teach it
Yeah,
inside of the
I
year
don't
of
remember.
opening. And we teach it from the perspective that I want people to be able to have a process, an inquiry process for those times when you're just like round and round and round and you can't decide, should I stay, should I go? Because there are pluses and minuses to any path. But this is bigger than that. Discernment is one of the actions, one of the ongoing conditions that will be happening during a reimagination, because being able to tell what feels right and what is right, what is values aligned for me, being able to do that, that's discernment work. Now, if we again return to depth psychology and return to mythology, return to fairy tales, one of the key things we see in mythology and fairy tales from all over the world is the act of discernment is an act of becoming. It's an act of individuation. It's an act of being human, right? So we have a fairy tale where the witch, the old hag, the Baba Yaga says, "Here, sort these lentils from this sand." That's an act of discernment. That work, the effort in there, like that's a symbolic representation of the work of, yeah, nobody else can tell you whether to stay or go. Nobody else can tell you what the newly imagined relationship will be. This is why you can't come to me and say, teach us how to reimagine in your form. My form has nothing to do with what your form will be. And this is one of those places where sometimes people will listen to us on the podcast and they'll write to me, or they'll be in a consult call with me and say, well, I want a relationship like you guys have, or I see myself in you and I want my partner to relate to me the way that Ken relates to you. And I'm like, we can serve as a model. We're not,
We're not a prescription.
we're not, and we're not good or bad. We're
Yeah,
just
nope.
us doing this thing. Discerning what your path is a part of the process. So we'll definitely have to dig into that more deeply. By the way, for anybody who's just maybe twigged to this is going to be a long ass episode.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be a 30-minute one.
Well, it's not, because we're heading into that right now.
Oh, okay.
But that wasn't the point. The point was to really get this out in a form. We could have kept this all inside of the year of opening and just said, yeah, it's behind a paywall, but or I could have held on to it until I publish on it. But I want this work in the world now. And I want people who are hearing what I'm saying and feeling like, oh, finally, it's not just about fixing, as in, I need new relationship habits. There's something more here. I want to offer everyone some food for that.
That is very generous and definitely aligns with what I know about you as a caring and intelligent person. And I think that one of the ways this
Making me work on my positive affect
I
tolerance
am,
here.
yes,
Okay.
it's good for you to do it right here. One of the ways that this episode is being different than other episodes is you often have to, or choose to, but I think have to, uh, change the level of conversation you have when you're folding my ideas in, because my ideas tend to come at a different level, which is
Yeah, coming in a different
useful.
from a different direction, I
Yeah.
would say, not a
Okay.
level. I would
Different.
not put
Yeah.
it into any kind of
And so this is,
hierarchy.
and this is Jolie. This is your work. And okay.
You bring in a different, it's a completely different angle,
Yeah. Well, I
which I
can,
appreciate deeply.
it's okay. Enough of that. You, okay. What do we need to start?
Well, let's actually start by talking about what reimagining isn't at all,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
right? Like I feel like the other thing that gets missed is that reimagining well, and this is related to discernment as well.
Hmm.
Reimagining gets conflated with two other ideas that come up a lot when people are doing like grown up relationship work. They're like, I want to be really mindful and thoughtful, or they're doing expansive relationship work. And so people will say, like, maybe it's about de escalation or conscious uncoupling. And de escalation and conscious uncoupling are both useful, they're useful concepts. They deserve their own space and time, and they might be or become part of your reimagining. Um, but those both have a clear path, right? A de escalation implies that there's going to be a reduced intensity or entwinement. There's a change to the shared expectations, and it's in a particular direction. It's right there in the word de escalation. A reimagining has space for us to go in any direction. We don't know whether we'll go D or up, or I don't know which direction we're going to
Yeah.
go.
I heard you say shared expectations, and it's sounding like the reimagination process. Um, does it require a certain suspension of expectation while you're working
Yeah,
through it?
it does. One of the things I ask for people to do if they're working with me privately, and we're going to talk about creating a liminal container for this work. One of the things I ask them to do is get clear that in order to reimagine, we can't be constantly threatening the relationship's existence. That doesn't work.
Okay.
So de-escalation or conscious uncoupling, which is like obviously oriented toward completion of something, we're uncoupling something. Those have a very clear there's a directionality and or an endpoint. A reimagining, we need to make space for becoming more entwined, for becoming differently entwined, for something we can't actually currently imagine. So we have to open up a lot more space. And it's also different from just saying we're going to go to couples counseling together. It's different from that because couples counseling it tends to have a focus on repair of what was. And often some skill building as well. Great. And repair and skill building are part of a reimagine. I've never seen anybody do it without repair and skill building. So I don't think we can take those out. But I find a lot of people will say, yeah, we've been in counseling for months or years, but we don't know what's next. We feel like we're stuck in what we're doing. And this is where depth psychology can be really, really helpful because this is about expanding the imagination and having actual practices to engage in, like, let's make more spaciousness here instead of just trying to fix and work within the system that is. So we're not just taking, say, the Gottman's relationship house and saying, yep, let's make it stronger. Or Stan Tatkin's relationship bubble, the couple bubble, and like let's make it more fortified. No, we're talking about maybe we won't have a relationship house. Maybe we're gonna have a relationship.
You're
Maybe I'm gonna have a relationship lanai. I don't know. Like
yeah.
I've been watching a little Golden Girls lately.
Yeah, we don't hear lanai a lot.
I I think like starting off here like with this differentiation, it reminds me too that a reimagination, like the reason I want to plant a flag here and say, I have a definition of what it is to do a relationship reimagination. This is my definition. This is what I am talking about. I intend to publish more fully on it. And other people can use these words. Like these words are just words. You can use them however you want. but I want to be clear on what I mean and what I don't mean when I say this, which also means as you and I head into further episodes, I'm thinking about when we get to episode 300 or 500,
Oh, wow.
we will have this starts to become built into our lexicon, not as a generic term, but as something that really has structure to it, something that we can come back to.
That's linked to these conversations that we have.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that, well, okay, my particular brand of autistic leaves me asking questions that are kind of have obvious answers. But you said that you wouldn't want to do this while threatening the existence of the relationship.
Right.
What's the problem there?
Well, it forestalls the work over and over and over again. Every time I find myself threatening the relationship, we could get into all the whys behind that, but every time I threaten the relationship, the imaginal space closes. Like I am now in a threat response state.
Yeah, I was thinking from the point of view of, well, it is one imaginary path from here. But yeah,
So
okay, the word threat does
we
bring
can
in
contemplate. We can imagine about what would be if we ended. That's a huge difference between how many times we had a whole period. A whole period.
Did. Yeah.
I'm thinking 2011 to 2014. How many times do you think I threatened the existence of our relationship?
Monthly.
Yeah, it's got to be. I'm thinking four figures.
Often more.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And I'm not trying to defend myself here. It was not healthy. It did not help us actually move forward. It was a cry for help.
Yeah.
What I recognize now is I was trying to get you to join me in this does not work.
Right.
Join me in the puzzle of something new. But every time I did, you went into a total threat response state of like, okay, just fix whatever's happening right now. That's not an expansive imaginal space.
No, it was not.
And I'm in this protective, defended, I have to defend my position state. It's just not beneficial for this process.
So I'm hearing that we're going to need a level of safety.
Yeah.
A sense of safety and practical safety around this process, this framework. So
this is hard. Safety.
So what can you tell us about what that means in this context?
Well, I just said, hey, we kind of got to take ending the relationship off the table for a while. That's not okay if you're not in a consensual and safe environment, right?
Right.
And I want to say there's a difference between saying I'm taking it off the table, like I'm not allowed to, versus I'm going to stop being in the habit of threatening the existence of the relationship. I'm going to work on that. And we're not going to keep going back to therapy and continually ask that question. Why am I even here? Right. But there are a lot of kinds of safety. Not all of us feel an embodied sense of safety. But when I think about a relationship reimagine, I need to be able to imagine. I need to be able to be in my imagination. I need to be able to engage with my dreams. I need to be able to engage in some expansivity of what could be. I also need to be able to look at what was without panicking, and all of this. It requires a level of relational safety. So when I see people who are not physically safe with one another, this isn't an appropriate path. And also people who are in coercive control patterns. If there's any kind of intimate partner violence, if there is mutually destructive patterns, as I think maybe the best way to put it. That's what I would say was happening at the end of, and honestly scattered throughout my entire first marriage, mutually destructive patterns that we weren't able to or willing to. I don't even know what the answer is. We weren't able or willing to stop them. And it's really hard to be in an imagination process while that's what's going on.
I'm hearing a situation. You just described a bunch of things, not just the safety, but like the imagination and what you have to do and the time you have to spend. Um, it requires bandwidth,
Yes.
and when I'm under threat, like you said, I didn't have the bandwidth to imagine. I
Yeah.
barely had the bandwidth to be fully present. And okay, so
So you and I did one of our first reimagines in 2014. So we climbed out of the hole. I went to grad school. Things started to really settle, and like we were imagining a new future together. We were making new agreements. Things were going really well, and then my brother got um, a terminal diagnosis, and we put all of this on hold.
yeah,
We stopped working on the reimagination completely. We foreclosed almost all other possibilities. We also got dragged back to court twice over that
yeah,
next year.
it was twice, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that was hard.
Yeah,
And so we didn't engage in this work. Now, interestingly, that's also what broke my habit of threatening the existence of the relationship, because during that time I had to do some growing up inside and start realizing like that just what that was costing us, that it did not work. We were in such a heightened threat state that led to, okay, we're going to be here for him. We're going to nurse him through this death. And he lived with us and we did that. And I didn't, and even though we had these court issues and all this other stuff going on and estate planning, and um we couldn't be distracted. We couldn't be distracted by the threat of ending the relationship
right.
or by reimagining. Life got very small, but very meaningful.
Hmm.
I have seen people go through that, other people since, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone, something huge coming along and just being a reality check. But for me, that was like a bucket of cold water that it had an effect.
It had an effect.
Yeah.
One of the things, in addition to the safety issues that you mentioned, one of the things that can take up a lot of resources
Hmm.
that you might want to apply to this process are things like deconstructing from high demand religion or other,
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
or like systemic, like dealing with systemic racism and
Right.
misogyny. Like those things can really be some back pressure.
Right. So if you don't have the bandwidth because you're also doing other things,
Yeah.
this might be a thing where we have to prioritize where are we spending the energy that we have, the finite resource of our energy, our mental and emotional bandwidth. And when we're talking about, with systemic oppressions, I mean, those aren't ever going to go away. So it begs the question, what supports could we possibly get
Hmm.
in here to help us while that's still true, so that we could do a reimagine? And one of the things that I found is really helpful is community. Like the more community a couple has around them, and the more they can rely on and actually be in an interdependent scenario, the more it's possible to do this. But conversely, when someone's coming out of, when they're deconstructing from high demand religion, often they are taking apart so many parts of their life that also deconstructing while also trying to do an open relationship. I mean, like
Mm.
simultaneously, like we're deconstructing from all these things. And one of the things we deconstruct from is monogamy, and also then jump into some open relationships that we don't maybe have the skills for and all that. That could lead to, okay, we need to reimagine this. But now we've still got that deconstruction happening at the same time that we're trying to build something new while also trying to reestablish and reimagine with an existing partner. Like even just saying that sentence made me tired. So we're going to do an episode in the very near future with Natasha Helfer about deconstructing from high demand religion and its intersection with non-monogamy. So I'm going to leave the rest of that conversation for a future time, but I think it's worth having said, when we're talking about safety, it's also about assessing, can I do this from where I am right now? And if I can't, what do I need to get in place so that I possibly could? And is it even possible?
So if we've gotten ourselves to, well, yeah, I think I got myself in a good spot here.
Mm-hmm.
What's the move?
Well, we need to assess whether you've got everything else required. We talked about what needs to be not going on,
Right, right.
right? But what needs to happen?
Ah, yes.
What are the elements that are needed?
Mm,
And I have like two essential requirements that I've never seen anybody be able to go without these things. The first is everybody who's currently in the relational dynamic that wants to be reimagined has to volunteer to be in this reimagining. Not
mm,
just passively, not just like hanging out and sure I'll show up and I'll just like sit through a class or whatever. Or not I'll show up but I'm unwilling to be vulnerable. Or I'll white knuckle it through, but nope, I'm here. I want to be in this reimagine. This is You can absolutely do personal, and I would absolutely ask anyone to invest in the personal work of individual therapy, individual growth. And I even believe you can change a relational dynamic from one side by changing how you show up in it. I've done it. But for a reimagination process, everybody in it has to actually be willing to get into the reimagining. If one person tries to do this on behalf of the relationship, we're missing the point, because the relationship itself is greater than the sum of its parts. It has its own psychological space. So everybody has to want to be in and participate. We're going to take up, like you said, different roles. We're going to
hmm.
we're going to we're going to exist in that differently, and we may not agree about all the ways that we're reimagining or not reimagining, but yeah, we can't do this for someone else.
This reminds me of something that you promote in the salon as well as other things. That relationships should be designed by the people in them, for the people in them,
Pillar
and
2.
this sounds like that. Like, well, relationships need to be reimagined by
Exactly.
the people in them, not just one
And
person.
they can't. If you reimagine the relationship without your partner in it, how consensual is this? Like, what's going on
Mm,
here? I have
right.
many, many
Yeah.
questions. And it might even sound frustrating, because it might mean, wait, so I can't do this? Yeah. It might mean that you need a different process. If your partner's not willing to do this with you, then this particular process isn't, it's not the path. And that's frustrating to me too. Like,
Hmm.
I wish I could
You
just,
could give somebody something that they
yeah,
could do to just,
but
but
it's not,
it makes
it just
sense.
doesn't work that
The
way.
interconnection doesn't
Yeah.
allow that.
The other thing
Yeah.
that
What was the other thing you said?
Okay,
Participation.
so I think this podcast actually is kind of ironic. Let's just be with the irony for a minute, because you can't just do it by reading a document or even a book if I write it into a book, or um, you can't just do it alone. You need facilitation and community. You need helpers. Now, facilitation and community does not need to be me. Please, it does not. That would be ludicrous for me to say. But you can't see all of what is going on in yourself or in your relationship just from inside it.
Right.
Having sacred relational witness is invaluable and, in my experience, necessary, right? I need the assistance of others who are willing to be in space where we can hold some vulnerability, where there's space to own who we've been and where we want to go. If we want to do something like shadow work, like, what is shadow work? It's not just journal prompts. It is not just journal prompts. We want to do shadow work. We're going to have to acknowledge that shadow exists inside of relationship, and
Mm,
relational witnessing, and seeing the shadow in the context of life, in the context of relating, is an entirely different thing. And it cracks open something entirely new and deeper. And this is where I think, when I say facilitation and community, you could potentially build this yourself. Absolutely. And I encourage you to think about how you want to build that for yourself. How do you want to engage with others? And you can also turn to people who are skilled at facilitating this kind of depth work. And in my experience, the having a small group of people who are willing to get in a container with you and bear witness to your growth is it is life changing.
That was going to be my next question: is what do you recommend for the size of this community for
Right.
facilitation and community?
I think it could be as small as, say, 6 or 7 people. I don't necessarily recommend like 2-on-2. I think the dynamic of like 2 couples trying to hold the space for each other is difficult. There's a lot that can happen when that there's a lot of dynamics that we actually see in polyamorous quads
Mhm.
that come up that can be really tricky. But I think when we get up into 6, 7, up to 20 people who are engaged and thoughtfully acknowledging that that this is not a small thing that we're undertaking could be really beneficial. I think of what we do in the year of opening as one potential place where someone could receive the relational witnessing aspect, and not everybody partakes in it, right?
Mhm.
Some people show up to the year of opening and they're a little bit more reserved. They're a little bit like they're not leaned in this way. But many people have decided to lean in. It's been described like many of our students have noticed that it's the first time that they were able to show up in a space and show the inside of their relationship to someone else who could just sit and hold that space without harsh judgment and honestly reflect. um I do believe that we can build this in a lot of ways, but I would love to see more people in small community oriented learning where we do this work together. And when people do this work with me privately, I will say it tends to go slower. It tends to go slower. I have a requirement for anyone who is possibly able to, who's in my private work, to also do group work because something new happens when you are relationally witnessed by people beyond your dating pool. It's just different.
That sounds important.
And specifically that, like a lot of people are like, yeah, I have, I have my friends. And then they start thinking through and they're like, oh, yeah, my friends are the very people that like are in my community of non-monogamy, which means there are dual relationships or dual imagined relationships.
Mhm.
This person could want to sleep with my partner. This person could be somebody I want to date. It helps to sort of bust that open and have another space altogether. So yeah, those are the 2 big essentials that I
So
see
participation
needed.
from everybody, some sort of facilitation and community.
Yeah.
Okay. So, um, let's say I've got that. We've established safety. We've got buy-in from
Yep.
everybody that we're all going to be engaged, and we found ourselves a community to support us. Doing what?
Doing what?
And you have,
Yay!
I
We're
do,
finally there. Okay.
yeah,
So we are almost an hour in and we're just at the beginning. And nothing could be a better
yeah,
metaphor
right, yeah,
for a
yeah,
reimagination than that.
yeah.
Yeah. Right when people, so those people who have asked me, and I trialed this, the idea of like, yeah, let's try doing 3 months. Every single one of those clients was like, at the mark of like 10, 11 weeks, they're like, what in the hell was I thinking? We're nowhere near, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Same with
right.
this. So, what are we going to do? Well, we're not going to now get out a checklist and say, now, class, in an orderly fashion, let us all open our hymnals and go through it one by one. That's not it at all. We're going to instead think about the conditions that are necessary for being in a reimagination and the thresholds that we're going to cross. We're going to think about conditions and thresholds rather than steps or phases. And this is something that surprises a lot of people, but it is it's very common in depth psychological literature. We'll often, instead of talking about steps or some sort of orderly operationalized procedure, we'll instead talk about pillars or moves. We'll talk about a lens of looking at things. So that's what we're evoking here. We're making space to look for the conditions that will allow for and promote a reimagination, and we're going to keep an eye out for the thresholds that we cross, because thresholds help us create a container so this doesn't feel like it's just an endless open-ended, I guess this will never stop, I guess we just reimagine from here to all eternity, because in fact there can be some containment even though there aren't clear phases.
So I'm thinking that because my mind is thinking it, I assume other people might be as well, that is there more than one threshold to this reimagination process? Because I'm imagining, oh, we do our reimagination, and then we have a threshold and we're done. Is it?
I think of thresholds as it's something to help us understand when we're crossing into and out of certain things. So when we talk about liminality, we'll talk about some thresholds.
Okay.
And then there I I love a good threshold, because a threshold means it's time for ritual.
Hmm.
So one of my favorite things to do is get to a certain point in people's work and recognize whether I recognize it and help them see it, or whether they start to realize from the inside out, like, oh, I think we're at a threshold. It's time to mark it. It's time to mark that. And that means we're moving into an entirely new era of our relationship. Does that mean we're done? Not necessarily. Only you will be able to know that. But you're not done living. So,
Yeah.
and also you might be to a space where now you are in the next place, right? We're going to talk about the liminality and how we're going to see what is. We're going to look clearly at what is. And then we're going to create some time to be in Never Neverland, to be in the betwixt and the
Mm.
between, to be somewhere else, right? And then to be able to cross back out of that and say, you know, I know now that I'm not done, but I feel finished with that totally in between, I don't know up from down time. And that in itself is a rite of passage. I published a chapter in a book on rites of passage, on polyamorous paradigm shift as a rite of passage. And there is, I've witnessed it too many times to deny its presence, that there is often this moment where people are like, yeah, you know what I know now? I don't know anything, but I'm here and I can be in this and I can claim what kind of relationship works for me, knowing that it might change again.
Okay, so yeah, you just described a threshold on its own, and I realize now where my original question came from is this imagination of a relationship as a monolithic thing. It
Mm,
was this, now it's this, versus the well, you mentioned soup earlier, the stew of things, and maybe this piece has just something we've just come to
yeah.
a step on. Okay, all right,
Yeah,
then we can
absolutely.
expect
Potentially multiple
multiple
thresholds.
thresholds in
Yeah.
multiple different directions. Okay. So, but I wanted to get into the conditions. What are they?
The
Like, I think that
conditions.
people are going to want to know what.
So first off, when we're talking about the conditions, and this is where I was like, I want my notes, because I want to make sure I don't fall into that phase or steps or stages language. It's
Mhm.
so easy
Yeah,
to, right? Like
but
everything in my Western psychological training, like my like modern day, like behaviorist on training, all of that, everything's all in steps and stages and phases. And so it's so easy. Um, but instead, we're going to think about the conditions, like the conditions that will help us stay in the imagination. So the condition is either present or absent. The condition is either strong or depleted.
Hmm.
The condition is something I'm feeling either resourced for or not, right? The first condition is a restoration of self. Usually when people show up in my office, in my, like, honestly, in just random conversations at Tanglewood, like when people show up in my world, often if a reimagination is on the horizon, they're often exhausted, really, really tired. And that's tricky because in order to participate actively, like I said, like everybody needs to sign up to be in this and to participate. And it is effortful. It is. And so now I'm exhausted from living the way I've been living and I need to do more work.
Hmm.
There is a need to restore the self to some degree. And I I'm looking for things. So when I'm talking with people in like, I do consult calls with everybody before they can join Year of Opening because I'm very protective of our containers and making sure that everybody who comes in, one, that it's a good fit for them, but two, that they're an appropriate fit for the container. And often what I'm looking for is hard. It's difficult to put into language. I'm looking for enough presence of self, of are they there? And sometimes we're not. And so there's work to do. Now, can you restore that? Yeah, you absolutely can, but there's work to do there.
So the so we're talking about this restoration
Mhm.
first. Just is that just it happens to be first in as we're talking about it, or is it a like a prerequisite for the
Well,
rest?
so when I was initially working through this, like
Hmm.
back, quite a while ago when I was codifying this and I kept coming back, I kept thinking it would be steps or a spiral. This felt like a precondition. Like this,
Okay.
this has to be a, like, no, we have to do this first. But it became really clear that it's not just a precondition. It's also an ongoing condition. It has to also be ongoing, it has to be present the whole time. So I would say we're talking about it first because if there's not enough of me present, then we get into a relationship reimagination. And if you have a lot of you present, who do you think's imagination is going
Hmm.
to populate? And interestingly, it might not actually be yours. It might be mine because I'm a mess and I'm depleted. And it might be that everything centers around helping me not be a mess.
I see.
Right. So it's not just about like, oh, the most resourced person will dominate the conversation. No, it's actually about like, are these two or more people really here with a capacity to be in this? And so I've worked with plenty of people who realize like, oh, actually I need to do some individual trauma recovery work before I'm resourced enough to do this.
Well, that was going to be my next question: is what sort of things might people do in service of that restoration, which I'm hearing you say you'll probably have to do something again later. Like I get myself
Yeah.
restored, I'm ready, I've got everything,
Yeah.
but then this isn't the only thing in my life, first of all. Second of all, it's hard
And an
and might
emergency
deplete
could
me on it,
happen.
and emergencies can happen. And right.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
So
mean,
you're probably going to have to do it again, but
I was restored and ready to go in 2014. 2015 to 16 broke me. Like nothing else in my life has ever broken me. I've been broken a lot of different ways, but John's death just
it was,
well, damn it, he's supposed to be here.
yeah.
And he's not. He's been gone for 10 years
Yep.
now. And he's my only sibling. My parents are dead. It sucks. And it broke me. So I was then not able to. So we couldn't reimagine.
Yeah.
You could do your work
I could
to a
do my
degree. Well,
work.
to a degree. I mean, he was your brother too. Like, but we couldn't. So yeah, even if you're feeling resourced, something might happen that means like, whoa, we got to slow this down. We gotta slow the pace because I'm looking for some things. I'm looking specifically for some capacities, some specific capacities, and if I don't have them, yeah, I might do trauma recovery work. That's a big one. And by the way, there are so many modalities you might choose from. I it's so beyond the scope of this conversation, which is already going to be an enormous conversation
Mhm.
to talk about all the various modalities. Some people are going to find that um, somatic work is the right path for them. Some people are going to find that deep analytical psychology work is great for them. Some people will find that DBT and the clarity of that work really works for them. And a million other things. Like
And
we could
some of our
so many.
some people who are good at, big with multiplicity will do multiple of those things.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But
So,
yeah.
but I'm looking for a couple things to sort of self check or to check in on my
Mhm.
students, my clients. I'm looking for I'm not looking for like generic self care. That needs to be there, of course, but I'm looking for nervous system capacity and flexibility. I'm looking
Mhm.
for nervous system
Yeah.
resilience. In other words, the little dips come and the person has both the tools and the ability to apply the tools to recover from those dips, from leaving their window of tolerance. They have the ability to bring themselves back into their window of capacity, right? So there's flexibility and resilience. I'm also looking for an ability to see the complexity of what has happened to them, just to them, to their story, their narrative, somewhat through the lens of multiplicity, to be able to see it without being caught in it in an
Mhm.
emotional flashback, to be able to talk about their experiences, their history, without shutting down or going into nervous system threat, um, being pulled back into them, but also to be able to talk about them without being walled off from them. Because that is like being walled off and being like, yep, that happened, but being just like
Yeah. Just.
dead to the world.
Mhm.
That's not any different. That's just a different face. Right. So I'm looking for the ability to hold also like, oh, for instance, I really struggled to hold the multiplicity of so we were going through a second round of child custody battles while my brother was dying. And
Yeah.
I was really struggling to hold the multiplicity of course, the other co-parents had their needs while I had mine because I was tanked. I also like I couldn't hold my own multiplicity. I felt just like a broken person. That was a signal that nope, no extra stuff. We're not reimagining, we're not renegotiating, we're not doing that. We're going to make things as simple as they can
Mhm.
be for this period of time. Um, so I'm looking for those things, and I'm looking for the ability to hold contradictions without collapsing. Because we're going to see a
That's a
lot of
that's
contradictions
a
when we
good
reimagine.
that's a good measure because of the number of contradictions that
Yeah.
will come up.
Like it'll sound something like, I know that we've had good months and years, and I know that there have been really hard times. I know that I had a role in this, and I can talk about my role in those mutual harms. Um, and I can also see a bigger picture. There's a certain ability to, but not a zoomed out, I am just an eagle soaring above this all and none
Right.
of it touches me,
Yeah.
right? I'm also still able to touch it, right? Um, we also need to maintain a plan for restoring because the
Mhm.
act of reimagining depletes, right? Like it's active work. So we need to continually tend to this. This is why it's a condition, not just like a thing okay, I've achieved this. Check, done.
Mhm.
We have to figure out what are our practices and how am I going to restore as we go?
I'm hearing an echo here of the need to be looking at what was, at what is, at self reflection, of self understanding, because there have been many years where I had no idea how I would restore myself. Like time, I guess I'll just wait
Yeah.
without knowing what the things were that I could do that would restore myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The when we're going through a reimagination, we're going through psychological growth, right? And
Mhm.
growth requires resources. Just
Yeah.
does. So we need to figure out where are we going to pull resources from. And that doesn't mean we're all going to be perfectly resourced and happy the whole time. We're going to go through periods of depletion, so we make a plan for that. And once I see all of those things, like I can see it, I can feel it. Oftentimes what I notice is if I'm in a couple, like I'll see people who are like, "Yep, they can see whether their partner is resourced, but they're struggling to feel into theirs,
Mhm.
especially if they have a hyper sense of always needing to be responsible or always needing to be good or on
Yep.
or good. I mean, like, okay, right? It can be hard to see, like, I'm depleted. I don't actually have the resources for this. And we can plan into a reimagination process. We can plan breaks. You and I take
Yes.
breaks
Yep.
from them.
Mhm.
We'll take breaks where we're like, yep, next 5 days, 7 days,
Yeah, this
12
is
days, parking lot.
yep.
Everything from that work is going into a parking lot, an actual physical written down parking lot,
Yep.
because no, we're just gonna chill right now. We're gonna just be for a little bit. And the tricky spot then is, how do we make sure to come back to it?
Right.
Now we're lucky because we have the ongoing
Yeah, we have
witnessing
people everywhere,
of
so
our
many people in the
cohorts
cohorts.
and our graduates, because our community is
Yep.
ongoing. So once people leave the year of opening, they're not gone. Like, they have access through their initial participation. Like, they don't have to pay to stay part of the community. They're just there. And so they're there with us. And so we're witnessed and part of a conversation all the time. If you're not, we're going to want to get you into an ongoing conversation that's there to help you remember, I can take a break and I can come back to
Yep.
this.
And watching other people in the community have those experiences is it's just a reminder, like when we take a break, when we start reaching out and being reached out to from the community, we see them doing their work. It's so inspirational. It's like, well,
It's
I better get back to it then.
it's true. And this is
Yeah.
another reason why community is so
Yeah.
essential, right? And facilitation and or mentorship of some kind can also serve that place. Like, there are many times where I'll have someone I'm working with a couple right now. They're going through a big life change. They've just made a great big life change. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's all good stuff. And we need to not be doing their most essential reimagining work right now. And now is not the moment.
Yeah.
However, there is some really important stuff to tend to. So we're getting strategic. We're getting really, like, powerfully strategic about what are we going to take on and what are we going to say that can wait. And then I can serve as the, yep, I'll be here. I got you. I will see when you are resourced again. I'm going to see that
Mhm.
trajectory, and I'm going to start pulling you back in. And now as I say this, I'm realizing actually every single one of my private clients right now is going through something like that. There's a big upswell of, like, wow, there's a lot of good, big building stuff. So it's not just the negatives. I've been talking
Right.
about death, and it's a great reminder. The great stuff, the stuff that we've been looking forward to, the dreams coming true, can also be like, whoa,
Still
hang
takes
on.
your energy,
Yeah.
takes your
Yeah.
okay. So
That's,
restoration. We're gonna be going up and down and up and down as long as it's not a downward staircase, but you
yep.
get back up. Um,
Yeah.
okay. So that's a condition that we need to monitor.
Yeah.
Okay. What else?
Okay. The next one, I call it seeing the water. Because when we talked about the description earlier, I started off with that. What is a reimagination? And first, I need to see. Um, James Hillman would probably call it seeing through. It's one of his. He loves that phrase in all of his writing. He talks about seeing through something. Right?
Hmm.
You're not just taking it at surface value. So we're going to see the water, and I think about this in 3 areas. First, I need to go hunting my own unconscious material.
Mm,
So that's going to look like seeing patterns and projections and defenses, and where I have these frozen images of who I am and versions of me. And it's going to look like dream work and shadow work and all that. Um, it is actually the territory of the individual work, right? Like, that's where I can keep doing that. Even if my partner's in a place of depletion, like, I can keep doing that, right? We can just keep going. This is also where I'm going to start to really notice where I may not have updated myself about myself. So I said that frozen image,
hmm.
right?
Oh yeah.
The story I tell about myself might actually be more of who I'm living as than who I am. That is a convoluted sentence, but sometimes we become the mask we're wearing.
Yep.
And it's time to take a look in the mirror and go, "Oh, it's a mask. Do I take it off? What if I take it off? What if I take it off? Right? Now, I said that all in a few sentences. That is big ass work. A Jungian analysis would undertake that same work and it would go on for years. It would be 5
Mhm.
to 10 years doing that work. And that's just one piece. So again, we're not looking for perfection. This is like what we're doing. We're seeing the water that we're swimming in.
It's an ongoing
Mhm.
process of looking.
And then we're going to look at the other. This is the capital O other. Whoever it is that's in the relationship with you, whether this is one or more people, the other as a genuinely unknown person.
I find this one. I find this one so joyful because it can be so limiting to and we do it. We're humans.
Mhm.
We take shortcuts so that our lives are manageable because so much happens. And one of the shortcuts we can take is I'm going to see this person as what I understand them to be. I'm
Yeah.
going to interact with them that way. And you can go a long way with that, but you're missing out on everything else.
Yeah.
And so asking the questions that you think you already know the answer to is like the first thing.
And I just love this. I want to just do a little callback to anybody who's been following my public work on relationships for a long time. This is some of my earliest like public work. So post dissertation, I'd been doing research for a long time and I'd been working with clients behind the scenes, but then I started having a public face. And the very first thing we did was called the curiosity date.
No,
And
yeah.
it was just about unfreezing the imagination. Who is this person?
Mm-hmm.
Because the frozen imagination of the other will foreclose the imagination immediately, right? It's seeing the other as truly irreducibly unknown. For some people it's terrifying, but I heard you bring the joy into it and I'm so glad that's where you went because yeah, it's also exciting.
Mm-hmm.
It also means that there's potential, there's untapped potential.
Right.
But this also means not seeing the masks, the versions of them that we wish were there
Mm.
and trying to push our projections onto them,
Right.
right?
Right.
So there's also projection recollection work
Mm-hmm.
here. Um this can also be disorienting,
Yeah.
right? Like
Sure.
I think about the times when I have certainty is one of the ways that I find safety. And believing that I know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
In practice, what that looks like is believing I know what your words will be. I know what your reaction will be. I know what you're thinking. I know what you're feeling. And all of these things are horrible in practice for our actual relationship because, first off, they disenfranchise you from your beingness.
Yep.
So that's fucked up. And also, I don't get to actually know you. All I know is the version of you who lives in me.
Yep.
That I have an inner council member. I have a dragon. And that version of you is real and relevant for my interiority.
Yep.
But it is hard for me to continually check that certainty of I know better than you do
Right.
who you are
Yep.
and how you are.
And so that
So I find it
constrains your imagination so
It does,
completely
and all the
around what could
possibilities
happen
of what
next.
could be, and it's so I hate that for both of us, and I recognize how, yep, and it shows up anyways, so I
Because
have to
it's
check
one of
myself
your routes to
constantly.
safety is certainty.
Right, right,
And just
and
because
the
it's a route to
idea of
safety.
certainty, because
Oh,
it's not
okay.
actually like,
Right. The
I'm not
imagination of
right! I'm
certainty.
not right!
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just the imagination of it. So the third thing that we're gonna be looking for is the relationships shadow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Okay.
in the
You gotta
space
talk about that.
Okay, in the space between myself and the other, right? So there's me, there's the other, there's the relationship. And you and I have talked about the relationship as like we've both gotten frustrated. And you named this 18 years ago. I remember you naming this way back at the beginning, talking about how frustrating it was to realize that your relationship in a marriage had been given by the state these rights and privileges and how frustrating it was to realize like wait, I didn't realize that that was actually a part of marriage, but there it is, and
Its own entity.
its own entity. And so we worked to dismantle that entity to the degree that we could. And yet we could never dismantle the relationship shadow. We
Right.
could never actually, we could never stop it from being true that in the space between us is this third thing, is this other sacred other. And it's not just the sum of you and me. And it's not even the sum of my shadow and your shadow.
Oh
Like
no.
that would
No,
be hard
yeah.
enough. Yeah, it's way more complicated than that. It's what has become amongst us. It's what's emerged over time. It's our shared narrative and the shared narrative of what's not there. It's like the absence as well, right? There's like a negative image of it too.
So there's you talk about the tension of opposites.
Yeah.
Um, things don't have to be opposites to have tension,
Right.
and something will emerge from that tension. So us two people,
Yep.
in our differentness,
Yeah.
will produce these things,
Right.
and some of those things I find, they they don't make themselves visible.
Well, implicit expectations are kind of designed to hide and
They're to
slink,
just,
right?
yep, we'll just paint
They're
over
slinky.
that. Yep.
And mutually maintained blind spots. That ring a bell?
Right? Yep.
What immediately came to mind when I said that phrase?
Mutually maintained blind spots. Um, the the relationship to sex in my first marriage.
Like the whole, like the even fact that you wanted sex
Right. Yeah.
at
Like
all.
the yeah.
It just,
Uh,
you were both
each
maintaining
of
from
ours
your own
understanding
sides,
of what the other person wanted without
which,
ever checking
and
in.
then I
And
came along and I'm like, do you both see the giant bump in the carpet? I see a bump in the carpet, right? Mutually maintained shadow is just like, it can be so obvious from the outside.
right.
Another reason
Another
it's
reason
wonderful to have
for
community and
community.
relational
Hmm.
witnessing and facilitation. It's whatever this relationship decided not to look at.
Yeah.
There are a million reasons why we decide that. Sometimes it's individual shadow. Sometimes it's the chemical reaction of our two shadows
Yeah.
together.
And
And
sometimes it was just as simple as stuff we didn't notice we were doing.
right.
Like, sure, that comes up out of shadow and everything, but it's not like nefarious stuff. It's just stuff that we didn't even notice was a pattern in our lives.
Well, and all the stuff that we thought everybody did,
Oh, wow.
right?
Yeah, that's a whole
I
other
mean, I
thing.
grew up
Yep.
in a family system. I don't just mean my parents. I mean all of my father's entire side of the family, all of the adults around me, they all yelled at each other and they were all loud.
Yep.
Like I thought that's just what you did. So I yelled a lot in my first marriage. And my husband didn't. I just kept yelling. I thought that's how you loved people.
Hmm.
And interestingly, he didn't even know the language to point it out to me. So he would say things like, "You have an anger problem." But while that was maybe true, what was truer and truer and truer over the years, because what really undid it was once I understood that not everybody did that. Oh, there's a lump in the carpet. Maybe we should take that out. I didn't even know because I started relating to you after I'd started doing a little bit of work on like, oh, not everybody relates that way. Interesting. So I came into a relationship with you and I didn't yell at you. Not that I've never yelled at you. I
But it
definitely have,
wasn't,
but
yeah.
it's not a feature of our relationship
Yep.
because somebody pointed out the damn bump in the carpet. Thank goodness. So we're looking again at the shadow of the self, the shadow of the other, and our vision of the other, and allowing ourselves to see the other as fresh and irreducibly themselves distinct, and the shadow of the relationship. So it's kind of a lot.
And it's going to take some time, and facing some of those things is going to require a little restoration after.
Right. So,
Yeah.
okay. So, condition one, restoration. Condition two, seeing the water we're swimming in. And I didn't even mention the fact that how each of you got there, like how shadow appeared in the first place, is also profoundly influenced by not just familial norms, but societal norms.
Mm.
So it's also going to look like, how did we even get into monogamy? How
Oh.
did that work? Or any other societal norm, right? Like, how did we even find ourselves here? Where did that come from, right? Seeing the water isn't just about seeing us, but about seeing the water of relating. And this is where it can be helpful at times when we're depleted in this relational work here. Sometimes there's still energy in other relationships. Like I have found
Mhm.
that I can still do friendship work even when I struggle deeply to do relational work with somebody that I'm being sexually intimate with. Like I like a platonic friendship. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, I can. Cool. So these things aren't also just distinct and like, oh, I'm either resourced or I'm not. They're contextual. And
Mhm.
seeing those societal norms, sometimes I have the bandwidth to like listen to podcasts and listen to how other people are doing, but not the bandwidth to dive directly into my stuff. There are a lot of ways to approach all of this work. So, seeing the water.
Okay. What else we got?
Condition 3 brings us to one of my favorite words that I used to hate. How long did you listen to me rail against the word liminal?
Oh yeah,
That was a couple of years
the
there.
the complaining during grad school was real.
Um, well, the complaining was real, and my misunderstanding of what it
Mhm.
was real. It took a while for me to actually let the image of what the liminal and liminality is, to let it like build and let my definition of it become expansive enough that it made sense. Because I kept hearing liminal and liminal from the Latin limen, meaning threshold. And that just pissed me off no end, right? So a threshold, and I just always would think about, I would get this image that would come up in my mind in the house I grew up in, little teeny house. There was this very narrow pass through between the kitchen and the living room, and there was this big wooden, I mean the house is hundreds of years old, big thick wooden, like an inch thick wooden threshold. And my father would say like, go clean around the threshold, because my job was to sweep and vacuum. And there was always dirt. The house was incredibly dirty. I grew up in a lot of filth. And the house was very, very dirty. And so I'd be down there trying to clean out, but I never did a good enough job. And there was all this dirt. But it was also it was this thing that like, here I am. I'm on one side, I'm on the other side. I'm on one side, I'm on the other side. It was so small. To me, this word, this image, liminal, threshold, just felt so small. And everybody was making this huge deal out of it. And here I am about to make a huge deal out of it.
Yep.
So, we need a liminal container. We need a liminal container in order to do relationship reimagine work, because without it, we're likely going to just keep living out the pattern we were already in, or try to skip over all the hard stuff and just be in the next thing. Somebody give me a set of rules, a new box, a new thing, and I'll just like, I'll be in it. Let's just do it. Let's just
Right.
do it. Can't do that. So I propose that we need a condition of a liminal container. The liminal container is, it's not a threshold like a simple piece of wood that I just step over. Though we are going to talk about thresholds that you just step over, because sometimes those exist too. We're still going to use the image of either a very long hallway with lots of doors off of it, or a room, a space, an area that you're going to pass through. Maybe that space is the size of your living room. Maybe that space is the size of a stadium. I don't know how big your liminal container needs to be. You're going to have to decide this. And you may have to decide it with a flexible understanding of what it needs to be and become over time. But we're going to create a liminal container because there are all these threads, all these moves that you're going to do, practices that you can take on, things you can try out. And when I start to talk about the practices and moves that you might take up, you might be inclined to revert to, okay, a checklist. Excellent. So anybody who just got out your pencils, put them down. Just put them down. No checklist here. Instead, we're going to make a liminal container where you're going to leave behind and step over a threshold into a liminal space of discovery, of the betwixt and the between, of not really knowing what's up and what's down, of being resourced and then getting depleted and re-resourcing, of seeing through something and then being like, what the hell, I'm right back in the pattern again, and then meeting the moment again, and seeing your partner in an entirely new light, and they're fresh and the whole thing looks like, oh my gosh, maybe we're done, and oh, actually no.
And maybe I feel the uncertainty of not knowing my partner as well as I thought I did.
Which is terrifying and sexy as hell. The liminal container it's a way to help us stop feeling so terrified of, okay, I'm gonna be in a reimagine, it'll just go on endlessly, by saying, okay, there are some things I'm gonna do in this liminal container. And what I can do is commit. I can commit my energy, I can commit my time, I can commit, maybe the most important thing, my prioritization to this liminal container of a reimagination. I'm going to prioritize relational growth during this time. I'm going to make it one of my most important things. And that's hard because the world is going to tell you that your relationship should just
Should just flow,
happen.
happen. Shouldn't
And in
take
fact, if it's
effort.
a good one,
Right.
all the more, right? And to be in a reimagination is to say, I'm going to be in the discomfort of not really knowing what this relationship is,
Yeah.
and not knowing exactly what's going to become. By definition, I can't know that, right? This isn't a de-escalation by definition. This isn't a conscious uncoupling, though those things might wind up happening. This is a time to say, I don't know. And other people are going to ask you, what are you doing? Why, like, what's going to happen? And when will you? And how will you? And you're going to create a container with your relational partner or partners to be in this unknown.
Yeah, the unknown. So um certainty, knowing what to expect, all of those things, they help you. They make you feel more secure. But in a liminal space, you've
Mm-hmm.
got much less of that.
Yeah.
Does it help you to know, to acknowledge, well, this is a liminal space, so I shouldn't expect to expect?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And you are, because you're good at being present in the moment. I find you're such a good liminality buddy. You're great. You are the Buzz Lightyear to my Woody. You are so to infinity and beyond.
Mhm.
That is so you. Um, I am a good grounding force. Now, I have done
Yes, you are.
the effort of reimagining with other people, and whew, if there isn't an ability for being in the discomfort of liminality, it's
Mhm.
hard. So all of my grounding force, yeah, it can be useful in there. But if all of us want to be grounded all the time and we want to know everything, then we might be really uncomfortable with this in between. If all of us want to just be in this, like, it's okay, we're just in the present moment. Well, we
Oh,
might
yeah.
never
You might
actually
never get
do
out.
the things,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
never,
So, yeah.
yeah.
So, what are the things? So,
Okay.
there we are. We're in this liminal space. We have decided that the known and the security of whatever was before, whatever domain it was in, whichever part of the relationship,
And the story.
and the story, we're going to leave that narrative behind, and we're going to see what's what.
Yeah. And
And
this is where I say this language stuff that we're doing right now, like giving these words is so important, because one of the things you can do in your community spaces is make their space to be like, we're in the liminal.
yeah.
That is a place.
Yep.
That is a safe thing.
And it's
It's
why the
okay.
it's a space. It's not a line.
It's not a line, it's a
It's a
space.
space.
Right. So, okay, I'm gonna make a list
Yeah.
now. And when I make this list, again, pencils down, And you don't get to decide that this is a thing that you're going to check off and like complete them. And you don't get to decide what order they happen in,
Right.
because they all need to be happening all the time. And you cannot put all your attention in all different directions all the time. So there's going to be this weaving together of,
Yeah.
yep, sometimes there'll be more of this and less of that, and awareness of this and that. And the
So
reason we
that's
use
why
this
you refer to them
language,
as threads, because you're going to be
yeah,
weaving them together into whatever it is that needs to happen in there.
exactly. And we're going to have different amounts of these threads are present for different people, including the different people in this relational container. So the first one that I'm going to name, but it is not better than or a priori to the others, is nervous system hygiene and training. I'm using that language because we've used it here on Playing with Fire before. We talk about nervous system regulation. We talk about neurosomatic intelligence in particular, because I find it's so achievable. People can take these tools on, they can learn them, they can practice them, but also because the founder of Brain-Based Wellness, who also founded the whole concept of neurosomatic intelligence and taught us, Elizabeth Kristoff, she talks about nervous system hygiene and also talks about how we can train our nervous system. And I
Yep.
find that to be,
That
we need that essential piece brought in, right? Because we're trying to build capacity. If we go all the way back to the beginning of our conversation, I said, I'm looking for people to have capacity. And we've also talked about needing to restore our capacity. I don't want you to have like a window of tolerance that's an inch open and like, okay, I'll just do all my work in that 1 inch. And every time I pass out of it, I'm going to have to wait till I get back in it. I want you to actually build your capacity. I want you to be able to train yourself in ways that your body can actually recognize, to open and widen that window so that there's more space. This is going to be a sustained period of uncertainty. By its very nature, then, it will be dysregulating, right?
and so this brings us back to the first condition of restoring.
Right.
Right. Okay.
So this is about having daily, but I don't even just mean daily. I mean, um, starting to build in habits of renewal and restoration for your nervous system. So NSI, great. The reason we like it and we suggest it is because it's very learnable. We'll make sure that there's a link in here. You can go through that link. You can get 2 free weeks at Brain-Based Wellness. We also have our nervous system essentials playlist where you can learn some super basics of this right now, very, very succinctly. And there are so many other tools, right? Like
Right.
we want to have a toolkit for this, and we want practices. We want to think about movement. We want to think about our what we're taking in. Like, what kind of media am I taking in? What kind of images am I taking in? How am I fueling myself? Like, how am I nourishing my body, my mind, my soul? What am I doing when I'm tired? Am I recognizing when I'm tired? Am I building into this container enough time for rest? I also want to take on, I want practices that can fit into those moments where it feels like if somebody asks me to have a practice, I'm going to die, right? Like, so Ken, would you demonstrate your favorite nervous system regulation technique from NSI?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're on
Here we
video
go.
for some people.
You got to look at my cheeks for this.
He's just jamming his tongue into his cheek pocket. Now, there's a whole procedure we can talk about, but
That's it.
when
That's
we're
the whole
talking
thing.
about little regulating moves, we're talking about things like making windmills with your arms, or lying down with a weighted eye bag over your eyes
Flapping
for
your
5 minutes,
hands
or
around a little bit.
moving your hands. And we're talking about little things. And we can also be talking about bigger restorative practices, like taking up a yoga nidra practice, like taking up a practice of getting up every morning and for the first half hour, just reading a book for fun. Now, if you have little kids at home and you just laughed at me, understand, I raised 7 children. I understand this may not be the moment. But there are so many ways that we can recoup nervous system flexibility. So we want to include that in the threads that we're weaving together here, because collapsing is a very real thing that could happen.
Mhm.
We need to be building our capacity here. Lots of pathways to get there, and none of that negates the fact that You can't do that for your partner.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
we
Nope.
have
That
to tend
is,
it for ourselves.
yeah.
Our partner can, though,
There is
co-regulate
co-regulation.
with us, not just by being physically present. There are a lot of things we can do. We've done some episodes on co-regulation, but there's so much to be said about that. And that's not just physical practices, but also emotional practices, practices of presence. So lots of stuff to do there.
Okay. So nervous system. What
Okay.
other threads do we have in there?
Grief work. Nobody run away too fast. We've talked about this before. What you have just set down and said, okay, we're not there anymore. We need to honor that. We need to honor what was there and also be willing to grieve even the littlest things
Yes.
of what we thought we had or what we did have or what we imagined the future would look like. We have to grieve the imagined futures.
And okay, I'm going to step out of my interviewer position for just a second and say something that I would definitely like you to fact check me on. But I think every liminal space involves grief
Yes.
because you've just stepped out of some certainty. And it doesn't matter whether you were certain that something was going to be awful or certain if something was going to be good. The loss of that certainty produces grief.
Yep.
Okay.
So Francis Weller is my favorite scholar on grief. If anybody hasn't read The Wild Edge of Sorrow, I could not recommend it more. It's in my top 10 books for life. He talks about the gates of grief. And the first gate of grief is everything we love, we will lose. And that includes the little moments. This morning, you and I were on a walk and we saw the first bluebird of the season.
Yeah.
And we'll never see the first bluebird of 2026 again. Like it's in those moments as well as I will never see my brother walk this earth again. Like it's all of that. No amount of focusing on the I'm going to get to a new thing changes the fact that there was a before, there was a different life, and something has changed in you, in your relational partner, in the space between you, and there will be different futures. And that grief has to be lived. Mourning has to be participated in, not just endured. And we definitely can't bypass it. I see all too many people want to skip over it. And I see so many people, and I have held so many people in the part of grief where they're like, I'm so sick of this. It feels like all I do is cry. By the way, grieving is not just crying. Grieving is many, many things. But yeah, the grief work is going to thread through all of this. It's going to come back over and over again. And living grief, in my life, living grief has actually become how I am so joyful. I was so angry in earlier years because I didn't actually allow myself to live my grief. Now that I do, now that I fold in the reality that I have lost deeply, every shiny moment is shinier, and it's just so much more beautiful. But I have to hold those two things at once. So I have to practice the lens of multiplicity, the fifth pillar of successful opening. Grief work is big. We've already done a couple of episodes. We'll make sure those are linked as well. So if people are like, well, what the heck does that look like? There'll be more here. That brings us to shadow work.
Tell me what you mean when you say shadow work.
Okay, I'm not going to make this huge because I could go on and on and on. We've done many episodes about shadow work already, and we're going to record for the beginning of 2027. We're going to record a 10-episode mini series on individuation and shadow work. So lots more to come.
Lots more to come.
But I just have this to say right now. Shadow work is dealing with the fact that we cannot know ourselves fully. Every time I increase my awareness of me, I also increase the size of what it is possible for me to conceive of in the unconscious. I am never going to know the totality of the iceberg that is me. I don't like that. As a person who likes certainty and likes knowing and feels safer by knowing things, that sucks for me, and it doesn't stop it from being true. The other thing I want to say about shadow work is that it just is so much more complicated than saying, where are you embarrassed?
Yeah.
Where are you shy?
It is so
It's
much
that
more
is,
than that.
yeah, those are relevant, valid questions, but it is so much more than that. It is embedded in our relational patterns. It is profoundly available to us in our dreams, right? So shadow work is also about deciding to do imaginal work. And that's the work we take up in another program that you and I run, Individuation Alchemy,
Mm-hmm.
which is a 9-month container where we learn depth psychological moves and we practice them. We're not learning them like, here's a book, read it. We're practicing them. The whole point
In
is to practice them
community.
in community.
Yep.
Again, right? So dream work and other forms of imaginal shadow work like orgasmic imagination. That is not something I teach everywhere, but you will find bits of it in the Sexual Shadow Masterclass, which is another a previous offering that I've had. Orgasmic imagination, daydreaming, artistic shadow work, expressive shadow work, embodied movement shadow work. And by the way, shadow work, by its definition, is embodied. Like the body is implicated in all of our shadow. We cannot separate psyche and body. So yeah, this is all interwoven. Shadow work is a huge topic. It's going to be threaded throughout all of this work.
And what else you got for threads in there? I mean, I assume like archetypes, we could go on forever
We could
about the
go
things
on,
that could happen in a
right? No definitive
liminal
list here.
space.
I'm going to mention 2 more.
Okay.
Repair work.
Mm.
So this is a big shout out for everyone who's like, I just want to move forward. Let's make a new future. It's okay. I can let go of what was in the past. Cool. We still have to repair what has happened. Now, this is not just repair with the other. This is also repair with the self, right? Patterns of harm, as Ken has said beautifully in earlier episodes, patterns of harm require patterns of new behavior, patterns of repair. It's not about apologizing, though an apology will be part of it, but about a sustained practice of showing up, of tending what used to go untended, of actually making reparation for what harm has happened. And that includes with myself. So, like, one of my acts of self repair is that I talk to my belly.
Mm.
Talk to my belly, right? My weight goes up and down. For a long time, I worked in a field where it was my job to have a low BMI, which is, I hate that about my story. It's just the dumbest part of my story from my own opinion. But I have a body and it changes. And one of the things I have to do is repair with this body that I have required to do things like grow humans inside of it, and repair with this belly who carried those individuals who now, by the way, do things like run the power grid, with, like these whole grown
Yeah.
ass, ICU
Mhm.
nurses that I like made in my body.
Yep.
Great 3D printing. I talk to my belly. Do I also say things negative about my body? Yep. So then there's repair work to do there. Repair is an ongoing process. I have patterns of harm with my own body. So I have to practice sustained patterns of repair. I have patterns of harm with you. So I have to practice sustained patterns of showing up and not just behaving in the way that I mean to, but continually checking myself, calling myself in and receiving the call in from you when you're like, ouch, that hurt. And being available for that.
Yes.
So
So
repair. Lots and lots and lots of repair, because repair is how we build a new future. Without that, what the hell are we reimagining? What are we going to magically be someone different? It's ludicrous to think about. So we have to weave this in. And the last one, we have to practice becoming. We have to keep becoming ourselves, right? One of the earliest stretches in the year of opening is just like the very first tease of, hey, everybody, here are my definitions for needs, wants, and bottom line requirements. Would you please share with me a couple of your needs, a couple of your wants, and a couple of your bottom line requirements? Everybody goes through the class and they're like, okay, okay, okay. And then I get the stretches back in email, and people are like, why the hell was this so hard? You asked for like 4 sentences. It's hard to know ourselves. It is even more challenging for most of us to unfreeze our imagination of who we are and allow space to rewrite the narrative and to get to know ourselves. So, individual becoming might look like taking some time to date yourself. It might look like taking up a new practice, taking up a new form of expression, a new way of being with yourself, but a practice of ongoing investment in who am I and what the hell am I doing here? I incarnated in a body for some reason, surely, right? So what am I doing here? What's this all for? Okay, so
So there's a lot to do in there. And
that list sounds ridiculous to me. And I also know that it's what you and I do all the time. Like
right.
all of those things, that's a pretty good description of what it is to live in this house.
It is.
So,
And so what is that? Okay. Do you want to
which by the way is why I haven't found another partner to live with me. I have yet to, in this iteration, since I've been available to live with people for the last few years, we've been available to do that. I haven't found anybody else who wants to do all those things all the time. Yeah, maybe someday.
maybe?
Hopefully. Crossing my fingers.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's kind of what I was going to say. So what does that look like day to day? And it looks like this. It looks like
We
the
should put up a camera sometime.
we'll just GoPro the day. Um, and so what it is a commitment to being in the growth space
Yeah.
and all the things that support it.
Yeah. So this liminal space, I talked about creating a container. Now, these practices will stay with you, right? So
Right.
I talked about them being in the liminality, as in we're going to intentionally get in and do this as like a high priority. Now, you and I are not currently in a liminal container. How much time would you say we spend, or you spend, like day to day on these particular practices? I mean, they're woven into our life, but
Yeah.
you know,
An hour or so a
yeah,
day.
I was like, I don't know, somewhere all of this together,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like when
about
I,
an hour-ish. On the
yeah.
weekends, it might be more because I might invest in doing some deep diving or taking myself out
Yeah.
on a solo date or like whatever. And I might go through a period where I'm like just really heavily investing in one area of this, but
And I
it's
want to
not.
point out again that um, a lot the things we were just describing, they're life. Like they are
Yes.
things you decide to do. I mean, you described getting up and reading a book as one of the ways. Like they are the things you decide to do with your day.
Yep.
So we're not talking about, oh, I got to take time out of my day to do this thing. No,
No,
it is your day.
it is your day.
It's a part of your day. And depending on what's going on, like when your brother was sick,
It's a much smaller
there were
part, but also
yep,
huge because we were
but
like
also
grieving. Like
yep,
grieving swelled up to fit so much of the space,
right,
and all the other things shrank. I was not
yep.
doing much in the way of repair work. We were just
And
kind of letting things slide.
and this is how it is a woven tapestry.
Yeah.
All the pieces show up when they need to.
And time wise, I do think it's worth noting that, I mentioned that like so many people show up wanting like,
Yeah.
let's do this in 3 months and
Mhm.
like, let's get this done in like 12 weekly sessions. Like, no, first off, you can't do that with me. You want to find somebody else who wants to offer you that, go ahead. But um, with all the tools and skills I have, I'm going to say no, it doesn't happen. But we do want to think about the containment because for a period of time, it can be incredibly helpful to say, yeah, this is going to be one of my top priorities for a period of time. It might be that the period of time you choose is 12 months, 9 months, 18 months is not unreasonable at all. It is perfectly reasonable. A period of time where you say, "Hey, let's decide to be in a container where we meet those preconditions of like we're not going to threaten the relationship. We're going to make space for this. And also, we're going to strategically prioritize this, which means we're going to say no to other things.
Right.
When you and I were in our last big liminal zone, we had to say no to a lot of things. We were not doing a bunch of things that would have been really good. Like I actually delayed, I was going to write I had a whole paper that was due that I had to just pause, like a published paper that was due. Nope, just paused it because I had to reprioritize time. You put off judo training for a huge period of time,
Hmm.
not because you had to, but because you were looking for where can I
Yeah.
resource more time for this?
Yeah.
We made hard decisions. The last time we did a liminality period while the kids were young, wow. I mean, it was the most strategic planning I think I've ever had to do. But the fact that we put a container around it and said, let's dig in and let's do this. Let's say this is going to be a priority and we're going to commit to this as individuals being a priority for a period of time also means that we're going to get dates on the calendar to say, here's when we're going to revisit this. Here is when we're going to enter the fourth item again. We're going to get to the fourth condition in one sec. And we're going to come out of this period of liminality again. So the containment also creates energy, right? That you must have some physics principle to speak to
Oh yeah.
that.
I
Um,
mean, physics, psychology, everything supports the idea that when you constrain something, it will be different. It will have more energy. There will be things that things will change.
right. So also we're going to be observing in like with this named container. We can make plans around it. We can prioritize around it. We can make commitments to each other around that. And that allows for this a certain level of resourcing all in its own, right? Like, okay, this isn't going to just be endless. We're doing this for a reason, and I know I can see where it's going. Along the way, you're going to want to have checkpoints. Along the way, you're going to hit milestones. You have to define your milestones for yourself. Along the way, you're going to be, remember, engaging with your community, engaging with your facilitation, engaging with mentorship, engaging with all of these practices. And that brings us to condition 4, which is both ongoing and also brings us to thresholds again.
Mm-hmm.
So I've talked about discernment and a discernment inquiry process. We teach it in the year of opening. I've talked about it already today, but this whole practice of, okay, we're no longer where we were, but we don't know where we're going yet. Okay. So the ongoing, continuous form of discernment is, do I stay in this process? And I would love to say we're just going to set that down, but hey, how do we be in consent if we aren't also in
Yeah.
an ongoing
Right.
process of discernment?
Yep.
Like I said before, discernment is also psychologically valuable. We're practicing being in ethical alignment with ourselves, right? And so the ongoing consent is required. I have to continue to come back and revisit. And I like to think of that as hygiene. It's like brushing my teeth. I just have to continually allow for that without allowing it to dominate my narrative or allowing it to take over and become the question of the moment, because it's not. The question of the moment is all the other practices and the self-resourcing and all of that. But I do need to check in with myself. Am I still in consent to stay in this process? Then there's a formal discernment, which brings us to the inquiry of like, what's next? What's actually next? Let's say we've been practicing all this becoming, we've been bringing the shadow into awareness, we've been allowing for repair work to work its magic. And what do we do from there? And that brings us to 3 potential outcomes. And those 3 potential outcomes none of them are necessarily a finished state either, but they do bring us to thresholds. So the 3 paths that I see are radical acceptance of what is, or a conscious ending, or a renegotiation and agreement making. Radical acceptance of what is isn't going back to what was before. You just did a reimagination. there is no before. Like you crossed that threshold and got into the liminal container. And I would recommend having some ritual to cross into that container.
So I hear you saying that when you step into a liminal space, you can't actually step back out of it to where you came from.
No, that multiverse pathway is cut off.
Right. Because the act of stepping into the liminal container, you can't undo it.
Right. The radical acceptance of what is, though, might be, hey, it turns out we're not really going to change big fundamental aspects of this relationship. Maybe for you, a big part of the liminality was, are we going to be polyamorous? Are we going to practice having ongoing, sustained, deep relationships with multiple others? Maybe you've come to the conclusion that no, in fact, we're not. Or no, in fact, I'm not, but my partner is. Or maybe the big questions for you were around, can I stay in this relationship if my partner isn't like on a spiritual path, if they're not engaging in this work the same way? And maybe what happens for you in the liminal time is you watch as they attempt to stay present and they attempt to do the work, but fundamentally it doesn't change. And maybe as you come through your work, you decide to come to radical acceptance of what is. And you choose from a conscious, empowered place. This isn't me doing the default. This is me saying, yeah, I'm choosing to step forward and embrace what it is, embrace that I still get to be on my individuation path. And I am going to live in the reality of who my partner is as they share themselves with me, not the frozen version of them that I had before.
Right. And so a conscious, intentional, I'm I've learned everything from the liminal space and chosen it. And there will be a lot of things from there that I didn't know before, like I wasn't consciously aware of.
Right.
But I'm saying, okay, now I know it. And
Right.
yes,
And the second option would be a conscious ending. You might follow a conscious uncoupling path from there. This would be about preserving the dignity of everybody involved, including the dignity of the relationship that was and what was, and also figuring out sometimes we're coming to a conscious ending, and also we still, some relationships, they can't end entirely. I share children with a person who I don't relate to on a very intimate basis. We share children. There's obviously a connection, and so there's also an element of reconfiguration in there. But a conscious ending, I love when a conscious ending can be two or more people who say we're going to honor and ritually unwind this. We're going to really honor what was and with dignity separate. But if your partner or partners aren't available for that, you can consciously end from your side as well. I did this for my first marriage. My partner wasn't available to do this, and so I crafted a conscious uncoupling from my side for myself that involved deep ritual. It involved a prolonged practice that then I finished with some very important steps, including some funny steps that people have heard about before, like firing my wedding ring off in a cannon, an actual cannon, right? Like, I like to include humor in almost all ritual, including funerals. So that's just me. I hope my funeral's funny. I really hope it's funny. That would, wherever I will be, that will make it for me. Like,
funny.
funny. Yes.
We have some funny kids,
We
so it's
do. Thank
possible.
goodness. Okay. And the third path, the third path would be renegotiation and agreement making, right? So you've done the reimagination. We still have to figure out, what are we actually doing?
Right.
And one of
Now,
the pieces in that reimagination is often like, oh, in the shadows was all of the implicit expectations, all the stuff that was never spoken, all those bumps in the carpet we just agreed not to look at.
mhm,
Our work here is to co-create a new form and actually make conscious agreements. This does not necessarily mean that you're going to engage in some sort of contractual, written, forever agreement. Ken and I both recommend strongly the minimum viable agreement
mhm.
process.
Yeah.
And I think it's just absolutely fantastic to use this to allow each other to be making our agreements conscious, but to be making them in experimental ways while there's still space to become. So if you're interested in that, there are episodes that we've recorded on that. Also, it is a primary piece of the year of opening. So that is a great place to come in and learn and then do it inside.
So practical.
So practical. When we're in this option, so if you're in renegotiation and agreement making, ambivalence is still probably present, right? Like people often want to get to that side and just be like, okay, there's no ambiguity.
Yeah,
It's just there.
I
No, you're probably going to still have things that you're like, I could go either way on that, or I'm still not totally sure. Yeah, you're alive. That's fine. The point here is that we're creating a shared vision, and we've done enough work to be able to now incorporate those things that were big, huge, heavy practices that we're so focused on. How can we weave those in so they become part of our day to day in a way that feels sustainable, manageable, so that repair just becomes part of the water we swim in, so that we keep seeing the water. So that is so important in all of these paths, whether we are accepting with total radical acceptance what is, or consciously uncoupling, or renegotiating and making new agreements. In all of those cases, I want you to keep seeing the water you're swimming in, right? So we have to hold that thread. So this brings us to thresholds. Those are the 4 conditions. And I know this is the longest episode of any podcast
Yep.
ever. It's actually
And
not, because I think the Dude Bros go for 4
okay.
hours.
Well,
So we're
I want to
okay.
add a little piece
Please,
to
please,
that.
please.
So you gave us the 3 possible
Yeah.
resolutions of discernment, and one of them is conscious uncoupling. And you have said in other places many times that uh, that ending is not a failure of the reimagination process.
Yeah, not at all.
And I'd like you to speak on that a little bit. Why is that so important to name?
If what you invested in was a reimagining, you invested time, energy, possibly money in finding your helpers and your spaces, and then all of that, if it results in a conscious uncoupling, first off, if you can uncouple and leave the dignity of the individuals
Yeah,
intact,
that's a
already
win.
not just a win for the individuals, but for the world,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yep.
that is collective unconscious work as well. But we also, when we reach the place of a conscious uncoupling, there is energy to return to the system, right?
Hmm.
When the wave stops being a wave and rejoins the ocean, that beautiful, beautiful parable, when you uncouple, you return energy back to your own system and to the other's system and back to the relational world. And that's not a failure. And an ending itself, like an ending allows us to sieve out the gold of what was there
Hmm. Oh, that's
and to
nice.
now incorporate it. And an ending can let us take responsibility for what was and incorporate that. Coming to the end of my first marriage it was painful. It was difficult. It was also a beautiful moment of realizing that I had been part of the mutual harm that was happening, a huge part of it, which meant I returned to myself, my own shadow bits, and said, wow, guess it's my time to take responsibility for that shit. I composted the hell out of it. And compost is very fertile ground for growth.
Hmm.
So,
Lovely. Thank you. So thresholds,
okay.
and you've talked a little bit about them, about the entry into liminality. How do you know when you're at one?
Right. So, first off, the threshold of even deciding to get into the liminal
Hmm.
container, I didn't call that out explicitly, but I just want to mention it now. If we go back to that condition, when you decide on here's the container, here's the time we can commit, we're making an agreement, we're committing to this. Yes, it's a consensual agreement, so there has to be ongoing consent, but we are committing to this. That deserves a threshold acknowledgement and ritual as well, right? Like, I love a ritual. Like, this would be a great time to say, build a fire and lay out some pine boughs. We happen to live in New England, so that makes sense. Lay out some pine boughs and step over them together, and then bring some objects and acknowledge, what are we going to be doing here? Maybe bring an object to represent each of the practices that we're going to attempt to weave together, to acknowledge we're creating this container. And then stepping back out of that little ritual, right? Stepping out into, ooh, we are in the liminal space. Here we are in the betwixt and the between. And there are other thresholds that will cross along the way that deserve to be honored with ritual, and community helps with ritual so much.
Oh, yeah.
If you can build in community support, if you can build in relational witnessing, it will be so helpful. But then there is this other threshold. Let's say we've gotten to a point where we are ready to commit to one of the three paths, and we're going to move forward most of the time. So the liminal container gives us a time delineation, but that doesn't mean we're actually done. I mean, plenty of times people get to that time and they're like, nope, we need more time. Sometimes people kind of, before the time is up, they're like, mutually, yeah, we're there. Here's what I'm looking for. I am not looking for perfection. I am not looking for certainty. I'm not looking for grief to be finished, because I'm not looking for shadow work to be finished. I'm not looking for you to know yourself fully, because that's, laughable. That's a cute joke we play on ourselves.
It's not a thing.
But I am looking for the ability to live our changes, to live these practices in a day-to-day way. And also, I'm going to add another word here. So sometimes, as part of that liminal work, people will do psychoactivating work, as in psychedelic work. Great, wonderful. That may be a huge support to you. If you want to do that, I thoroughly encourage it. We've done an episode with Dr. Nicole Thompson on that. There are lots of great practitioners out there doing it. However, I have seen many people think that they are doing their reimagining work by riding the highs of psychedelic experience and feeling the in-love feelings again, and then sort of hydrofoiling over the low spots back to the next one. I need to see that both I and my relational others can live our relational changes when we're sober, too. When we are stressed, not perfectly at all, but when we're experiencing change. I want to see that some of these things start to bubble up out of me. Like, for you, one of the things that I noticed is you started being able, so you've always had presence. That's always been a big strength. So you having presence, not a sign that you'd made
Not
a
a
huge
sign of,
shift. You achieved what you needed to in reimagination. But when you started to be able to take responsibility for shadow pieces and repair and bring them to me, versus me being the relational administrator and saying this needs to be dealt with, I watched you do that, and I watched you do it in little ways, not huge, gigantic, we've set this time sideways. There we are. There's some evidence that we're ready to step out of liminality into the next thing. For me, presence is a really, really big one. That ability to stay and to be with myself, and to not be caught in my grief as if that's the whole story, to not get pulled into that one-sidedness, pulled into shadow. So it's so specific, though, the way that we'll recognize that it's like porn. We'll know it when we see it. We'll know it when we feel it. You'll recognize it versus be able to identify it from a checklist. And then we take actual ritual action. We do the things.
That is
enter a new form together. Like, we're not pretending that what happened didn't happen. And this is another place, if you have community, please invite them into your ritual, even if they're community at a distance, right?
But witnesses, The act of being witnessed can really help solidify
Yeah.
or energize, I would say, not solidify, but energize the changes that you've decided to make and have made and are finding helpful in yeah, having somebody witness that
Yeah.
change is
And okay, so
it's the
this
magic that ritual is meant
yeah,
for.
exactly. And this is why. So we live in a time and place where there are vanishingly few rites of passage.
Yeah.
So when I wrote the chapter that I did on call it titled Polyamorous Paradigm Shift as rite of passage, I I've had many people be like, cool, I don't really get it. Like how why are you writing about rites of passage? This is why. Because what we're just describing here, it is a rite of passage. It
Yep.
deserves, therefore, to be witnessed, and then it deserves incorporation back into your community. And if your reimagining includes an uncoupling that other people do not approve of, that can be really hard.
Yeah.
If your reimagination involves a new relational structure that other people don't like because they were invested in the old one, this may be hard to feel witnessed. And this is why it's so valuable to have a community where your truth can be witnessed. And this is actually why in the year of opening, I stress over and over again that the goal isn't to get people open. The goal isn't to be polyamorous. It never was and it never will be. The goal is to decenter monogamy, grow the skills of having any type of relationship successfully, and then be able to feel incorporated in your truth. What is true for you? Come back, share with us what is true for you.
Yeah.
The new will still be tender. It'll be tender like a new shoot coming out of the ground. And
Mm-hmm.
it also will have a lot of energy, right? Like you're growing something in compost.
It,
It's likely to grow well, but you could step on it
but it
really
needs
easily,
care. Yeah.
right?
It needs
It needs
attention.
care, it needs attention, maybe protection. And one of the ways that we can lose ourselves here is that our old patterns will try to reassert
Right.
themselves. So it can be so helpful to also name, what have I changed? Allow yourself to update your own narrative. Say your story out loud. And this, we haven't recorded on this, but something you and I have worked on deeply is telling a new story,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, wait, there's an old story, and we do it here. We tell our old stories here because we use our material
Right.
as learning material for other people, but updating the story so that our now story isn't the old one, right? My now story has to make space for the version of me who is gentle to my body, has to make space for me to be someone who does not yell at their partner, has to make space for me to be someone who encourages and steps in when she sees a problem rather than cuts down. But my old story is that I am a cold ass cunt who will cut a bitch. It takes effort
And
for me not to reassert my old story, let
yeah,
alone the way I might see you through the old frozen image. I
right.
have to let that melt, and then I have to practice keeping it away. I have to
Yep.
see you as
And
you are now.
those things are connected. If I get caught in my old story, I'm going to be caught in my old vision of you.
Yeah.
Like almost certainly. And so both changing either of them helps change the other. And and that's just like the personal work of doing it, but then um acknowledging it with ritual is I said it was magic. That might be too vague. It it's like hmm, it's like putting the doors on the house. Like
Mm.
you've built this new thing, and you want to live in this new thing. You want to live in this new house.
Mhm.
And you spent all that energy in the liminal space. You did all this stuff, and it was hard and it took a long time. And you build it, and then you don't do the ritual, and so now there's no door on it, which means all the old stuff can just start walking back in. And I
You have
made
to be
that
able to
mistake
choose
last
when you
year.
walk. Oh, yeah.
You were at a spot where it was time, and I didn't participate with you in making it happen. And so, um, yeah, it which stretched out the experience. It stretched out the liminal,
Yeah.
which left you in an uncertain place for longer, even though you were like, you knew what the changes were and you were living them, but there was still that tension pulling you back.
Yeah.
And that was unfair to you to
Yeah.
not have done that ritual, and made it and closed the door
Yeah,
so
and
that we
and
could
the
move on.
ritual that we're talking about, and this is one I want to name very specifically, right? We're not just talking about the ritual for a couple or a polycule to say, here's our new version of our relationship. The ritual that we're talking about here is a reintroduction of me ritual, a
Yeah.
reintroduction of self.
Yeah.
So this would be the capital S self introducing themselves to the capital O other. You don't know me. I don't know you.
Right.
You'll never know me fully. I'll never know you fully. And wow, what a mystery. And yeah, there was this moment where I was banging on the door asking for this ritual, and you were overwhelmed. You were in the midst of a very stressful time, and then we started living life, and honestly,
That's
everything was going really well. And then before we knew it, 9 months had
the
gone
time
by.
had passed.
And now a full year has
Yeah.
gone by. And
Yeah.
it's not that we never acknowledged it, but if I could go back and change that, I would say, like, we needed
Nope,
that
this needs to happen. It
reintroduction
doesn't like
ritual.
so what you said about the prioritization in the liminal space.
We dropped the ball too early.
Yep. And
Yeah.
my priorities, my assignment of my psychological energy
Yeah.
was, well, I would change it
Yeah.
going back.
And I accept that. I'm grateful that you're naming it with also no blame. Like, I was also there and I could have insisted and I didn't. And we did do one thing. So we didn't do the ritual,
Yep.
but we did have an episode
Yep.
of this podcast where we got together and we talked about what the change, we talked about the Shadowlands, we talked about how bad it had been, we talked about what we did to get through it, and we talked about what we had done. We went away to celebrate that
Yep.
and had a beautiful trip, and we talked about it. And so in a way, this podcast became
Yep.
the thing. So it wasn't completely dropped. And that brings us to my last point for today, which is celebrate the fuck out of it.
Oh, yes. Yep.
You deserve a cake.
Yeah.
You deserve a cake. This is work that the vast, vast majority of people will never even attempt, let alone actually sustain. Moving out of that adversarial tendency of modern Western relationships, and moving out of that, the binary of we're either together or gone, or the binary thinking of we have to be this or that to each other, moving into a place of multiplicity, embracing an ongoing knowing of each other as unknowns. Like, yo, that is the work. You achieved something.
Yeah.
So please do. When you ritually
Celebrate.
acknowledge this, celebrate it.
Mhm.
And that part we did do. We did a
We
6-day celebration,
Yep.
and it was glorious, and the sex was
Yeah.
magnificent. And
It was a good time.
it was amazing.
It was well celebrated.
And therefore we also got to be witnessed. We were witnessed by people inside of our programs. We were witnessed
Yeah.
by the people who we engaged with on that topic, the people around us, and we shared it here.
Mhm.
Its own sort of weird parasocial witnessing that we
Yep.
have. Can I close by just saying, by returning to something from the beginning?
Yes.
We talked about this as work, as effort, and I've now closed with it, talking about work and effort. But I want to bring back that phrase, soul making.
Mm.
Even what you and I just did. So this podcast is now almost 2.5 hours long. That is by far the longest podcast that we have ever recorded. And we're not going to break it into pieces. We're going to treat these grown-ups who are listening like grown-ups who know how to press the pause button when they need to stop.
Good thinking.
Go for it. You
Yeah.
guys got this. But this too was soul making. This, you
Yes.
and I, we
Yes.
spent months and months preparing for this, having many conversations, writing. I found no fewer than 7 documents where I had already written about this when I went to combine everything and call this. Then we spent days working on this particular episode. Then we spent all of today preparing together for it and deciding how we would present this.
And every bit of that
Was soul making.
was soul making.
Soul making being the deepening of experience through engagement with its complexity and darkness rather than its resolution or transference. Just wanted to say that out loud because I think in this day and age, if we keep talking about relational work like it's homework because we got detention or something, we are missing the damn point. Soul making is the point. And that is what my next book is actually about. It's about relationships as soul making. I know everybody's expecting a jealousy book. I know everybody's expecting a book that's the curriculum of the year of opening. This is what matters to me. This is what needs to be in the world. So thank you for giving me the chance to parse it and to pull it out. And
well, thank you for letting me be here with you and make my soul alongside yours.
if you've been listening to the show for a while, then you already have a good sense that how we were taught to do relationships isn't the whole story. The year of opening is a place where we actually learn how to do things differently, not just as a concept, but as a lived practice. We are engaging fully in a year of support, of community, of mentorship, the opportunity to learn how to relate better to ourselves and to each other.
Enrollment is open now. Go to yearofopening.com.